It's over. So last Tuesday, I did a presentation at North Haven Camera Club. You know, Bill and Bob were there.
By the way, Bob, Doug, thanks for doing that presentation. It was very good, very informative.
Yeah, I had a good time.
Yes.
And, those of you who were on the Monday Zoom, I kind of did a little bit of a preview to what I was going to be doing for the Tuesday class. Unfortunately, as you guys saw, I had all kinds of problems. Um, the video was not recording properly. Now it looks like I got that resolved. Crossing fingers, of course, I'll say that it's fixed and then something else will break. It's like Murphy's Law, but everything's working. Um, Alan mentioned that, last week his microphone wasn't working. And it's really strange because, like Alan mentioned, it's like he hasn't touched any of the settings. So it's like perplexing why all of a sudden it doesn't work. And I noticed the same thing on my end. I opened up my OBS and my main microphone wasn't working. It wasn't registering. For some reason, it keeps switching it to the default microphone instead of. I'm not switching anything on my own. It's doing it behind my back. So anyway,
Hey,
crossing fingers. Yeah.
Doug, I've had the same problem with audio software where if I change to something else, like I change to microphone instead of line in or vice versa, it doesn't go back to a default.
Yeah, but that's just it. I'm not changing anything. It
Oh,
was set up.
okay.
It was set up and it was working for the longest time. And then one day, the microphone decided it's not gonna work. And I did some digging, and it's like, oh, the software's not recognizing the this microphone. It was like on the whatever the system figures is the default microphone. So I just got to make sure that I double check it every time now. Same thing with the recording. I got to keep my eye on. I got that secondary screen. So here's my camera. I prefer to look at you guys, in the camera, but occasionally I got to look and make sure that everything's working properly. But anyway, minor problems, right? Minor problems. Oh, Brian is coming back in. We lost Brian and we gained Brian. We lose to Brian, we gain to Brian.
But the thing is, we didn't even know he was gone.
Yeah,
That's the
really.
story of my life.
All right. So, well, anyway, so last week I did that event, and we had a good time. Bob Von Told.
I'm told, yeah.
Yeah, Bob was gracious enough to help me out for one part of it, and then we had Laura Parisi help me out for another part of it, and her part was probably a little bit more extensive than Bob's. Bob's was just holding up the gray card for me to get the proper exposure. So he came away unscathed. Laura, on the other hand, well, we're going to utilize her photos for tonight's class.
Yay!
All right. So, for those of you who were not at the North Haven workshop, it's not a big deal because it was basically what I covered last Monday. How to set up your portrait lighting. If you don't have a light meter, it's just easy, you know, take a shot, look at it, adjust your lights, take a shot, adjust your lights, that kind of thing. And I kind of walked through that process at the Tuesdays workshop. And because I was shooting tethered, I was able to display the images to everybody. So as I made an adjustments, I took a shot. People can see, you know. So there's really no mystery about setting up a basic portrait lighting setup. So let me go ahead and switch over to this. All right. So what I ended up doing is we started off with a single light, and it was just a matter of figuring out our exposure, trying to find a nice position so that it made it, you know, it gave her some attractive lighting. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to create the essence of a three-dimensional subject on a two-dimensional plane, you know, which is what a photograph is. We're taking 3 dimensions, which is height and width and depth, and trying to display it properly in a two-dimensional medium like a photograph, right? And the best way we can do that is to utilize highlights and shadows to give us that form of dimension. Okay, that kind of illustrates, you know, the shape of whatever it is we're photographing. So we utilized a couple of lights, and we played around with placement. This one, you can see the light is kind of spilling onto the background, so the background is equally lit as the subject. And then just a shift in the light, pretty much bringing the light forward and kind of glancing across the front part of the subject, allows that background to go darker. So at that point, I introduced a second light, which became our background light. And the plan was to create a bit of a silhouette. No, I'm sorry, not a silhouette, a vignette with that background light. So here it is. We set it up. It was a little bit overpowering. And then we made some adjustments. You know, changed the power setting, changed the angle a little bit. It's still a little bit too much. Then I introduced the grid onto the light, and we got this final result. And this is the image that I delivered to Laura. All right. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to walk you through the editing process. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through a fairly easy Lightroom process. And then if you guys are interested, I'll take it into Photoshop and do something a little bit more extensive. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and share screen, share. All right. All right. I think everybody see the screen okay?
Yep.
All right. Awesome. All right. So, whenever you do a portrait session, you're going to find that there is a process where you're going to build towards that that final image, and it requires, you know, a little bit of tweaking. Once you got the routine down, you can get to that end results rather quickly. So you can see, even though this was a demonstration and I kind of explained a lot of the process behind my decisions, I actually got there in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 images. All right, so 6 images to get to a really good portrait. Now, could I have done more? Absolutely. Would I have done more? Absolutely. This would not have been the final results, because as I look at this, there are a lot of flaws that I would fix. But, you know, being that it was a workshop environment and, you know, there was a certain time constraint, close enough is good enough. Okay. And unfortunately, in a busy commercial environment, sometimes close enough is good enough, simply because you don't have the time and the luxury to just spend as much time as you want fine-tuning and correcting the little flaws. All right. So for one, there's a couple of things that I see here that I don't like. All right. And you guys know that the way I like to work with my editing is identify the things that are wrong with the image, and then in post-processing work to correct what you see is wrong. Okay. So let's mark this up, shall we? All right. So the first thing I notice is that we are not quite centered. All right, we're not quite centered. My aim was a little off. I was mid explanation. I was considering the lights more than anything else, so I wasn't really paying close attention to my composition. No excuse, but things happen. So the one thing I want to do is I want to kind of recrop this a little bit so that it puts her a little bit more into a centralized position. Okay. So that's, you know, problem number one. Okay. Recompose. All right. The other thing is, all right, I had the softbox on camera left. Okay. So on the subject's right-hand side, camera left. So what happens is the majority of the light is hitting this side of the image, which creates hot spots, obviously. And of course, we have, you know, shadow areas on the opposite side. Okay. So actually, that was the goal. All right. To create a little bit of highlight and shadow to give the face form. However, because I was using a fairly large softbox, aimed 45 degrees down, it also lit up her shoulder. Could I have readjusted the softbox a little bit to, you know, hit less on the shoulder? Yeah. But again, sometimes you want to work effectively, not necessarily drag things out and nitpick everything. So this shoulder, okay, what I want to do is I want to darken that down, all right, so that it matches the opposite side. All right, so I want this. Now what that's going to do when I darken this shoulder, it's going to make her face It's going to make her face the lightest part of the entire image. Okay. It pretty much is right now, but we're getting a little competition because of this. Okay. All right. Everything else looks pretty good. One thing I did notice is that her hair was kind of sticking out a little bit. That's not anything that can be done within Lightroom, okay? But we can fix it in Photoshop. So after we work this in Lightroom, maybe we'll take it into Photoshop and I'll show you how to fix things like that, okay? Oops. All right. Everything else looks pretty good. All right. We got a couple flyaway hairs. It's not that big an issue. I know some people really just have, issues with these little strands of hair that kind of come sticking out all over the place. Personal preference, whether you want to fix all that stuff, unless the hair, it looks real well. No, because there is a time and a place for everything. Messy hair has a place. If you're looking for the intentional messy hair, then flyaway is fine. But when you're looking to do a nice portrait, and especially people with long straight or semi wavy hair, those flyaway strands can be a little bit distracting depending on how you light it too. If it's strongly backlit, what happens is these strands of hair really just show up as if they got a light of their own. So I may spend some time in cleaning that up. If it's a glamour shot or more of a commercial shot, then I'm going to spend some serious time making sure that the hair is like perfect. Okay. But again, time is money, and sometimes you just got to say enough is good enough. Okay. The glare on the glasses, that's another one where people say, well, it is what it is. Glass reflects. People understand that this is a portrait and lights are going to be reflected in the glasses. Other people say, you know what, that's very distracting. I got to get rid of it. Okay. The nice thing is, it used to be very difficult to do in Lightroom. Now it's gotten a little bit easier with the AI stuff. Her skin looks pretty good. One of the things that, especially women like to see is a little bit of softening of the skin. Okay. So we might tackle some blemishes and some color correction on the skin. Okay. And then everything else, let's see. Everything else looks pretty good. She was wearing this lanyard with a badge on it. All right. I'm not going to bother removing it. Okay. Maybe in Photoshop, when we export this to Photoshop, if you want to see how that can be done, we can do that. But for now, I'm just pretty much going to leave it. Okay. So other than that, maybe do a little bit of color correction and just balance out the exposure a little bit. All right. And maybe do a little bit of dodge and burning. Okay. Sounds like a plan. Everybody see how I analyzed it? All right. All right. So we're going to go. Actually, this is the image that I want to. I'm looking at the wrong friggin' image. All right. But the same things apply. It's the same problems. Okay. We're still a little bit off center. Now, all right. when it comes to cropping, there's pretty much two schools of thought. Some people say, you know, I'm going to crop first and then do my edits. That way, I'm not doing any extra edit work in areas that are going to get cropped out, which in essence makes sense. Okay. Then there are the people that think the opposite. It says, well, I'd rather edit first and then crop, because if I need to change my crop, I don't have to worry about areas that didn't get edited properly because I shortcutted it by avoiding those areas. All right. So it's a little seesaw, whatever works best for you. In Lightroom, the editing isn't overly extensive. The majority of the editing is going to be global for the most part. And the way I'm looking at it, because of the highlight on the shoulder area, we're gonna tone that down. We're gonna use a gradient mask. So whether I crop now or crop later, it's not going to affect that gradient mask. So let's go ahead and we'll crop first. Okay. In this case, we can either keep to the original aspect ratio, or we can say, you know what, we're going to change it over to the 8:10 aspect ratio, which is common for headshots and for, you know, printing in a larger format. Okay. So personal preference, which one you want to use really doesn't matter. I kind of like the 8:10 for portraits. It tends to be an aspect ratio that many people are familiar with, and it's rather pleasing. So, but again, if you need to change it for some reason further down, we can always, remodify it down the road. Okay. But you can see the original aspect ratio gives us a little bit more of the lower body area. So 6:1, half dozen the other. Okay. I kind of like the 8:10. That tends to be my go-to. Okay. All right. Okay, so the first things we realized that this bottom left-hand corner was a little bit on the bright side. So let's go ahead and create a linear gradient. Okay, and we're just going to bring the exposure down. And what I'm going to do is I want to match this side to this side. Okay, so I want the value here and the value here to be equal to each other. Okay, so that looks about right to me. Okay, you could always toggle it on and off, on and off. All right, and actually, if we even hit a little bit of that background, okay, I think that'll work, because with the crop, we lost a little bit of the darkness on this side. So, all right, that was easy enough. Okay. All right, globally, I think I want to bring the highlights down just a little bit. Open up the shadows maybe just a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit of texture, but I'm going to balance it later on. Okay, now the thing with texture is it kind of think of it as a little bit of a sharpening. It adds a little bit of very small, detail-oriented contrast. Right, so it gives things like hair and fabric a little bit more pop, a little bit of crunch. Okay. However, it also does the same thing to skin. All right, so what I'm going to keep in mind is I am adding it here globally, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to counter that locally by creating a face mask and removing some of that texture there. Okay, all right. So that is actually looking fairly decent. Okay. And of course, we can always do a before and after. Before, after. So very subtle changes so far. All right. And if you ever want to, check your work as you're progressing, it's the backslash. Okay. So on your keyboard, the backslash will toggle between what you're working on and the before, and you'll see it right up here, before and now. Okay. All right. So what I want to do is I want to add a little bit of sparkle to the eyes. Okay. Oh, come on. All right. So we're going to use a local adjustment. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, all right. Adobe Lightroom now has these wonderful AI masks. All right. It has a great ability to recognize that there's a person here, understand that this is the face, this is the hair, this is the eyes, this is the lips, this is the teeth, all down the road. Okay. However, there's something to an old school way of editing that is also nice. Now, there's pros and cons. The nice thing about the AI generated mask is that you can create a preset that handles, like, for example, brightening up the iris. However, I find that what it's doing is it's selecting the entire iris. So what I'll do is it'll basically say, this is my mask. Okay. And it's going to apply the brightening to the entire mask area. Okay. The way I used to do it before we had AI mask was a brush, but I would apply it just to the lower section. So what I would do is I would basically do like a smiley face so that it's actually brightening up the lower part of the iris. Now, why is that? Let's see if I can zoom in here a little bit. 200%. Okay. Okay. If we look at her eye, you can see that the upper part of the iris is in shadow. Okay. That is caused naturally because of the way the eye is designed. Okay. So we have the eye. Let's see if we can maybe do it like this. Okay. We have the eye, and then we have the lens, and then we have the iris. Okay. Above that, we have, the upper lid and, of course, the lower lid. Okay. Because our light is above the subject, it's going to cast, let's see. We'll do it like this. It's going to cast a shadow on the upper part. Okay. So the light is only hitting the lower part of the iris. So what I want to do is I want to emphasize the lower part where the light is actually hitting it. I don't necessarily want to brighten up the shadow area. Okay. And if I were to use the AI mask, it's going to select everything and just apply that brightening to the whole thing. So I'd rather not do that. Okay, so let's go back to 66 here. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a brush, size it accordingly. Let's see. I don't need a lot of feather on this, okay? But I do want the flow and density to be at 100%. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do this kind of like little smiley, or some people call it a little boat, little smiley. All right, and of course, if you press and hold the Alt key, we can use the eraser. So if you go a little bit too much into the pupil, we can always remove from the pupil because we don't want to brighten that as well. Okay. All right. So here we're gonna maybe just add a little bit of exposure brightening. Doesn't require a lot. All right, just a tiny little bit. Here, turn it off, turn it on. Okay, so you can see how it looks very natural. We maintain the shadow on the upper area. And of course, if you go too far, you can always, just erase some of it from the upper part. Okay, all right, so let's just rename these first, shoulder. That way you guys can see exactly how I'm building this. Let's see. Come on, double click. Iris. All right. Okay. All right. The little areas where we get a little bit of that glass reflection. All right, let's go over to our remove tool. We're going to use, all right, so I think I definitely covered this in the past. The generative AI utilizes the servers, the Adobe servers. So it's basically sending it up to the cloud. It does its thing and then sends it back down. All right. It requires a token. All right. You get so many tokens with your subscription per month. I think it's like 250 tokens or something like that. Right now, they are not charging for this service, but from what I understand, eventually they may start charging. So who knows? So what I like to do is if I can find a tool that does not utilize, sending it up to the cloud and then back down, I'd rather do that first and then just utilize the generative AI as kind of like the last resort. So what I'm going to do is if you go to the tool itself, you can see that there's a check mark to utilize generative AI. If you leave that unchecked, it's going to keep the editing local. All right, you're going to get better results if you check it. So if you're doing something complex that is going to be difficult for the local machine to handle, at that point, utilize it. You got to get rid of a car that's sitting in front of bushes in front of a house. At that point, yeah, utilize the AI. But something like this, probably not needed. All right, so let me size my my tool down, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint on that. All right, and right here, and right here, and it doesn't look like it's doing a very decent job, so we may have to. All right, let's take a look. Yeah, actually, maybe. If you didn't know it was there, you might be able to get away with it. Let's see. No, I'm not liking it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and delete these. All right. And I'm going to click on the generate AI. Or actually, you know what? We can also change. We can also check out just the regular healing brush. See if that works. Okay. Oh, that one did a good job, actually. All right. I'm kind of happy with that. Yep, I'm liking that. Okay. So, there we go. Don't need to use the AI feature. All right. That works. Oh, actually, that one's a little off. Let's bring it up a little bit. Okay. Good. Okay. So now if we zoom out, definitely cannot see that. Okay. All right. I tend to want to lighten the teeth up a little bit. Again, we can use the AI tool, have it analyze it and say, okay, here are the teeth. But you know what? I'm okay with just getting a brush and going through here and painting it in. And if I overshoot it, I can always Alt or Option and just erase from the areas that I overshot it. Okay. You want to be fairly careful with these. All right. Okay. With the iris, just the same with the teeth whitening, there is actually a preset for this. Okay. Obviously with the iris, it's a simple, just, the exposure slider, bring it up a little bit, and pow, you get that brightening. With teeth whitening, it's a little bit different. There's actually two sliders. You want to brighten it up a little bit, but also you want to change the color cast, remove some of the yellowing. All right. But if we click on here where it says custom, all right, and you see mask one preset custom, if we click on that, we have a bunch of pre-built presets that we can apply. And towards the bottom, we have teeth whitening and, of course, iris enhance. Okay. Teeth whitening. Okay. And all it does is, you can see, it just takes it and brightens it and removes the yellow cast. And of course, if it's a little bit too much, we can go to the amount slider, which is here on the left hand side, and we can reduce that. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Wrong slider. It's right here. It's on this side. And we can reduce that down accordingly. The thing is, you don't want to make it look unnatural, all right? And the default, it just looks a little bit unnatural. So I'm just going to tone it down a little bit. I'm also going to come in with my eraser brush and just clean up the edge ever so slightly on that around the lips where I kind of overshot it a little bit. Okay. And we're good to go. Okay. Oh, what'd I do? All right. Let's turn that off. Before, after, before, after. All right. Minor little changes, but it makes a big difference. All right. For the skin tone, for that, I will utilize the AI tool. All right. Let me rechange this to teeth. Okay. Add, select people, not select subject, select people. When you click on select people, it's going to look and identify if there are any people in the photo. You can see it identified there's only one person. If you hover, you can see that's the mask. It does a really great job at making mask selections. So we're going to select that one, and then it's going to generate a bunch of parts. All right, the facial skin. Yeah, and these masks look horrific when when you look at them. Facial skin, body skin, eyebrows, the sclera or the white of the eyes, iris and pupils. All right. So here you can actually see exactly what I was talking about. It's just a big circle. I don't want to apply my iris sharpening and brightening to the whole thing. Okay. Lips, we might do something with the lips, teeth, hair, and clothing. Okay. So in this case, what I want to do is I want to click on the facial skin and the body skin. All right. And at this point, you can say, okay, what is it that I want to do with this particular mask? If it's color correction, I would say include the eyebrows as well, simply because the mask tends to kind of leave a little bit of skin area around it to kind of, it if you're not careful, it can leave what looks like a halo around the eyebrows. So I'm going to select the eyebrows, and I'm going to leave everything else off. Okay. Now, you can say, okay, I want to create 3 separate masks. So you can control what you apply to all of these independently. But in this case, I just want one mask because I'm going to be applying my settings to all 3 of those. So I'm going to make sure I leave that off, create mask. And you can see that it does create one mask, but it's got the 3 parts. Okay. You can't control these individually. They're all underneath the single mask. All right. And I'm just going to call that skin. Okay. Oh, what the heck did I do? Let me, I don't know what I pressed there, but okay. So what do I want to do? Well, the one thing I definitely want to do is I want to come in and soften up the skin a little bit. Okay. And just as with the others, okay, we do. Oh, I see what it did. It applied the teeth whitening because that was the previously selected mask. Okay, so if we look here, we do have 2 presets for softening up the skin. We have Soften Skin Light and Soften Skin. Pretty self-explanatory, all right? So what I might do is I might click on the first, and that actually does a fairly decent job. All right, we're going to check the second one. Oh, that one looks a little bit over processed. I might not do that one. See how processed that looks? Okay, we can tone it down. Okay, but if we're going to tone it down, might as well go with the Skin Soft and Light. And if it's not enough, we can always add with the amount slider as well. Okay. And of course, if we add too much, it starts looking over processed. Okay. All right. I kind of like the amount of the light. Okay. It gives her skin a little bit of a glow too. All right. The other thing that I want to do is possibly maybe.
Say duck and put a black mark on her mouth, on her tooth on the
Oh
left
yeah.
side.
So those are little markers that indicate these
Okay.
are the masks.
Okay.
All right. So you can see the mask for the shoulder. Yeah. So that's what those things are. Actually, if we zoom in, you can see this little icon is it's a person mask. That was a part of the person mask, while this one's just a regular mask, as well as this one down here. Okay. So those are the control points. Actually, with a if we zoom, let me zoom into here. All right. So even though you see that as like a little upside down house, all right, if we select it, as soon as we select it, it will identify exactly what kind of a mask it is, and it's a brush mask. Okay. So that's all that does. Okay. All right. So the what I can do is I can piggyback on this and do a little bit of color correction. So maybe, remove some of the yellowness to her skin. Okay. Not too much because we don't want her to look pasty, but we also don't want her to look jaundiced. All right. There we go. That's looking a lot better. All right. Now, I want you to see what I don't know if you can see this. All right. Facial skin. All right. See the edge of the mask? All right. The edge of the mask. You can kind of see where it applied the effect and it didn't apply the effect. So you have to be careful how you balance that. Okay. When we zoom in, it's kind of hard to see exactly what it's doing. It's not until you zoom out that you see that, wow, we have a very definitive border, very definitive edge. Okay. So how do we fix that? Well, what we can do is go to our mask. We can add, select the brush. We're going to increase the feather 100%. Give it a little bit of a size up. I'm going to reduce the flow down because what I want to do is I want to build up the effect. All right. Now, in this case, we have to be careful because what we're doing is we're applying a softening to the skin, which, of course, as we start going up into the hair, it's going to start affecting it. So what I don't want to do is I don't want to go, so much into the hair that it looks a little bit too strange. Okay. Actually, let me zoom in here. All right. Let me increase the flow a little bit. All right. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can work around this edge a little bit and just soften it up so it's not as noticeable. All right. So maybe in here, in here. O for our mask. Oh, it did some crazy things over here. So we're going to go, we can erase it if we want to. The Alt key just turns it into an eraser. Okay. There we go. Maybe a little bit here around the glasses. There we go. Okay. Much better. Still got a little bit. That might be, let's see. Okay. I have a question. All right. It's looking like the mask is really accenting that edge. All right. But you just saw that what I did is I applied a little bit of a brush to it, and it's not looking like it did much. So now I have a question. Is that an effect of something that I did, or was it in the original image? So we can go and preview it. All right. Yeah, there is a little bit there, but it's definitely accentuated it with the editing. Okay. So we might have to address that if it's that big of an issue. Okay. So how can we address that? Well, what is it that is happening here? All right. If we analyze it, actually, I'll send it to you guys. Anybody have an answer to what happened?
The brush, it looks like a shadow. I mean, from that point, you have a shadow of the light. But
Yep.
when you I exposure increase the light with your brush and see if it separates the hair from the shadow.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So what happened is when I applied the skin softening, it also did a little bit of brightening.
Mhm.
And what it did is it exaggerated the contrast that was already there. All right. So if we look at the before, you can see that there is a shadow being caused by her hair. Okay. And as soon as we applied that skin softening, it just enhanced it a little bit more. Okay. So we can go and create a new brush. All right. Again, what I want to do is I want to keep my flow down. All right. And I'm just going to paint here. And I'm going to, we're at teeth whitening, restore default. Okay, so let's see, maybe shadows. No, shadows not doing anything. So definitely, let me return that to 0. Yeah, okay. So now, there we go.
There, that's
Before,
it.
after, before, after. So this is, what are we doing here? What is this called that we're applying to our image? We
Well,
are artificially lightening something that was dark.
you're adjusting a mask. Isn't it right?
Well, we're using a mask, but what is the action called? Do you know?
No, I do not.
We are dodging.
And burning, dodging.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
dodging and burning. Yep. In this particular case, we're dodging. Anything that lightens, we're dodging. All right. So now if we, all right, so we'll call this dodge. All right, turn that off, zoom back out. Okay, there we go. That looks a lot more natural. It doesn't look like she's got this, mask of brightness on. It blends it into the hair a little bit more. All right, make sense? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, since we are dodging and burning, let's go ahead and do a little bit more. All right. One of the things that a dodge and burn technique that I found works really, really well in Photoshop is utilizing curves and a very, very soft mask. Okay. We can do the same thing in Lightroom. We don't need to necessarily use curves. All right. Uh, although that is available to us. Okay. But we can utilize the exposure. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to reset to, here, come on, reset that. Okay. I'm going to create a new brush. Okay. And new brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and increase the flow full. Why not? Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a type of dodge and burn that kind of mimics, think of it like applying makeup. Okay. And this is where I kind of got the idea for this is, well, I didn't get the idea. I stole it from other retouchers who mimicked how makeup is applied. All right. So when women apply makeup, they're contouring their face, and they contour by using highlight and shadow makeup to accentuate and de-accentuate certain features. So what they do is in the parts that they want to come forward, they put a little bit of highlight. In areas that they want a little bit of receding, they'll put some shadow foundation. All right. So that's what we're going to do. And the way it normally works is the bridge of the nose, okay, the tops of the cheeks. All right. So keep in mind, these are like the areas that normally receive the most amount of light. All we're doing is we're taking what's already here and we're emphasizing it a little bit more. Okay. The top of the chin. Okay. Some people will even do this little area here, the Cupid's bow. All right. The above the eyebrow, which is the ridge of your brow. Okay. Also, the outer part of the eye usually gets a little hit. Okay. And some people will even do the areas around the mouth, where the smile lines are. Okay. So this is the map for the highlights. Okay. For the shadows, we tend to go on the inside of the eyes, down alongside the nose, the underside of the nose. Again, these are the areas that we kind of want to recede. Okay. The underside of the cheeks. All right. The underside of the lip here. And usually under the chin, maybe along the neck area. All right. And any other areas that you feel need to be corrected. All right. Okay. So this is the plan. All right. So we have a new brush. I'm going to show my overlay so you guys can see. All right. Some people will even do the bulbs of the nostrils, depending on the amount of features, the features of the person. Okay. So you notice that I am using a very, very broad, oops, that was a little heavy, very broad brush. I'm just kind of building it up here. The top of the chin here. All right. Yeah, we'll do the smile lines. Okay. We can reduce down, and if we want, we could even do here. Oh, forgot this area here and this area here. The outer corners of the eyes. It just helps brighten the eyes a little bit. All right. There's our plan. Doesn't look like much. I'm going to turn the overlay off. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to increase the, oh, my saturation's down. Increase the highlights a little bit. Okay, now you don't want to go too much because then it looks, you know, like grossly overexposed. All right, but we want a little bit of that oomph, that pop. Okay. Now I'm using the highlights because, as you can see, I can move this slider quite a bit and it makes very subtle changes. All right. Watch what happens if I use the exposure slider. If I push the exposure slider, I can just go a tiny little bit and look how much it applies it. All right. So that's why I don't normally go for the exposure slider on this. I go for the highlights. All right. And then, of course, salt and pepper to taste. Okay. Let's rename that face dodge. Oops. Dodge. All right. We're going to create another one, brush. Okay. And this one we're going to take our, well, we're going to apply our shadows. All right. So this, we're going to go to the inside of the eye. It's still keeping, oops, restore default. All right. Still keeping that white from the, whatchamacallit, from when I did the teeth whitening. All right. I'm going to do underneath the nose, underneath the lip. All right. That just kind of gives a little bit of a lift. All right. We're going to do a little bit of countering here. This side probably doesn't need it because it's already in shadow. I don't think it's going to really affect it all that much. Okay. All right. Some people, if somebody has a lot of forehead showing, they may burn down a little bit along the sides here. Like, for example, just to kind of reduce the size of the forehead a little bit. But because she's got bangs, we don't need those. So let me remove those. All right. And of course, all down in this area here. We're going to, and if we want, we could even accent the chin a little bit. The other area that some people will do is the smile line. They may go ahead and darken that up a little bit. All right. And what that does is it just kind of exaggerates the cheeks a little bit more. Okay. So let me go a little bit on the side of the eyes here. All right. And what we're going to do, let me turn off the overlay. If we use the highlights, you can see it kind of does some weird stuff. So you have to be careful. You can't go too much. The other way you can do this is just bring the shadows down. Okay. And what that does is any shadows that are there, it's going to darken it, but the shadows need to be there in order for that to take an effect. All right. So that may not necessarily be the best choice. All right. So highlights, once you get a little bit of the highlight, you can add, I'm sorry. Yeah, you could even do the whites. Okay. Now, the other reason is if we look at the histogram, we have to understand what do these sliders manipulate. Okay. We know that the white slider manipulates this area here. All right. And just look up in here area. You can see this is the whites. This is our highlights. This is our midtones. Okay. So we got our whites, our highlights. Okay. And if we take our whites, even though none of these tones may sit here, what we're doing is as we push this slider over, it's going to push everything in front of it, including the highlights, into the shadows. All right. Again, it's like that accordion effect. Okay. The more separated you are from a particular sector, the less that sector gets affected. So for example, if I manipulate my white slider, it is 2 sliders away from my midtones. It'll affect the midtones, but in a very subtle way because it's 2 sections away. It'll influence the highlights a lot more because it's adjacent. So if I push the whites, it's immediately going to push my highlights as well. Okay, so you can pick and choose which one you want to manipulate. All right. What you want to do is just want to pick the one that gives you the results that you want. All right. We don't want to go too much, then she's really starts looking like an old lady. Okay. We just want a little bit of that oomph. If we need to, we can come back to the highlights. Okay. All right. And here, actually, you know what? We'll rename these. Instead of face dodge, we'll go highlights. And this one will be face shadow. There we go. Okay. Everybody understand how I did that and why I chose the sliders that I did?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. So here it is, before and after. Actually, you know what? Here, we'll do this. Before the masks, after the mask. All right. Big difference. See the difference? Big difference. Okay. We've smoothed out her skin, gave her a little bit more of a youthful feel, contoured her face a little bit more. Okay. All right. Now, if we want, we can actually go ahead and zoom in a little bit more. And if we want to, we can use our spot removal and get rid of some of these blemishes. Okay, let's go. Just a couple of blemishes. I'm not going to go too crazy. She actually has pretty good skin, so I'm not going to go too crazy on that. All right. Awesome. Last thing I might do here, if I wanted to, we can utilize a little bit of color contrast. All right. So I might, for example, select background, create a mask, and There we go. There's our background mask, and using the color temperature, just maybe cool that off, or maybe even just shift the color a little bit, make it a little bit warmer, a little bit redder maybe. Oh yeah, that doesn't look too bad. Maybe a little bit too much. Okay. Turn it off, turn it on. I kind of like that. That looks good. Okay. And we'll rename that capital B, capital G for background. That's my default. Okay. And we can call that done. All right. Actually, you know what? I'm going to add one more mask. I'm going to apply my little vignette mask. Okay. And all that is a radial mask that's inverted. So I'm darkening the outer edge rather than the center of the mask, center there. Okay. Make sense? All right. There we go. Before, after, before, after. And you can see that the tools that we used were relatively simple. Obviously, this took a while because I'm explaining the process, but this is something that you can do within just, maybe 10, 15 minutes of effort. Okay. Any questions on anything that we did here?
I assume to go Lightroom to fix her hair
Yep.
or Photoshop.
Yeah. So at this point, like I've said before, I kind of like working in Lightroom first because I could get so much done, so much accomplished very, very quickly just by pushing sliders around. It's non-destructive, and if it gets me to even 95% of the job, sometimes that's all it's required. Okay. In this particular case, I could argue that, yeah, the hair's bothering me a little bit. It's kind of sticking out a little bit. I want to put that into some control. So in this case, I'll export it to Photoshop and use the liquify. So, but the nice thing is all my edits that I did here get ported out to Lightroom or Photoshop. All right. So we're going to go right click, edit in Adobe Photoshop, or you can use the shortcut Control Command E, and we'll launch Photoshop, and then it loads the file. Voila. Okay. All right. So in this particular case, that's pretty much all I want to do is just fix up the hair. So I'm going to go filter, liquify. Okay. But before I do that, I might want to preserve my edit. So I'm going to do Control J, Command J to create a copy. The other way you can do this is rather than create a copy, go ahead and create a smart object. Okay. So what you do is you just, oh, you can't do it. You gotta, unsecure it. All right. So you right click, convert to smart object. All right. And what that allow you to do is that allow you to adjust your edits after the fact. Okay. In this particular case, I'm not doing anything super extensive. Yeah, I'm going to be using Liquify. Liquify is a destructive process for the most part. So that's why I'm going to create a copy just in case. But I'm fairly confident with my ability to use the Liquify tool. I'm just controlling the hair. I don't feel I need to go too crazy. All right. So we're going to go filter, Liquify, and then it opens up in the Liquify tool. And what I'm going to do is the first tool, all right, is the push, all right, which allow me to just literally just take those pixels and push, okay? And you can see that I'm going little sections at a time, all right? And what I want to do is I just want to take that hair that looks like it's kind of bumped out, either, you know, what we normally refer to as bedhead, but it's probably she probably was wearing a hat or something because it was pretty much a cold day. Now, there is a logic to how I do this, all right? There is a logic to how I do this. We have to keep in mind that we're working on hair. Hair has a direction, all right? You can see that it flows downward, okay? So what I want to do is when I make my movements with the tool, all right, when I make my movements with the tool, I don't want to go up, all right? I want to go down, all right? Because as you can see, as those pixels compress into her side, all right, it's making it look as if that hair is laying down, all right? So I want to make sure that I go in that downward, not too much because I don't want to stretch it. See how it stretches it? Okay, stretch. All right, I don't want to do that. All right, I just want to bring it in and make it lay down. Okay, I'm not going to worry too much about those strays. I'll take care of those after the fact. Okay, now the other thing you have to consider is you have to pay attention to what it's doing to the background. All right, because as I'm pushing the pixels in, it's warping all this area back here. That's being warped, all right, as it's being pushed in. All right, in this particular case, it's a nondescript background. It's a portrait background. It's just blobs of color and luminosity. So you're not going to notice any of that warping and movement, all right? But if it was something with a pattern or there was some kind of background, at that point you have to be aware of what it's doing. There are other ways of tackling it. You basically got to separate your subject from your background and take care of it that way. But we're not going to worry too much about that. Okay. All right. So all the way down here is our preview button. We click that off. That's before, after, before, after. All right. And you can say, oh, you know what? That's looking a little bit too overdone. All right. When we compare it to the other side, that looks a little bit overdone. All right. Well, what we can do is we can come down to the next one. Okay. and we can kind of it's kind of like an undo. So what we're doing is we are undoing some of that action. And all I'm doing is I'm just tapping with this tool. And as I tap, it backs it out. Okay. And of course, if you go too far, well, then you just come in and pick your push tool and do the same thing. All right. Now, I suggest using the undo brush rather than using the push and pull to, if you push in too much and then it'll go, oh, why that's, and then we just, well, I'll just pull it back up. What happens is as you push and pull, all right, that's doing a lot of damage to these pixels. So you have to be very careful how you do it. Photoshop has gotten relatively good at maintaining, for the most part, the integrity of the pixels, but just realize if you overwork something, it's just going to start turning to mush. So be careful. Okay. All right. That looks pretty darn good. We hit OK and we are back. And of course we can before and after. Okay. All right. Any questions with the liquify?
That was amazing. I
Um,
had no idea that was even available.
oh, really? Oh,
Yeah,
good. Something new.
I did not know that
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
That
yeah.
one. I'm putting that
Uh,
in my box, right? My toolbox.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And you'd be surprised how once you start getting used to the use of the liquify tool, you'd be surprised where it actually comes into play. Like, for example, in this particular case, we have her shoulders coming across, right, pretty straight here. Okay. On this side, we have a flat angle here. And on this side, oops, what happened? What did oh, Control Z. Oh, I see what I did. Okay. On this side, what we have is we have kind of like an upward turn towards the edge. Let me zoom in here a little bit. Okay. It's very subtle. All right. It kind of looks like it goes a little bit of a hook. All right. So what I might want to do is take this back into filter, liquify, all right, and just take that shoulder and bring it down ever so slightly. All right, and maybe even take the center part. All right, see how the center part has a little bit, what's the opposite of cusp? It kind of bows up a little bit. All right, I might want to mimic that on her opposite side. So just that little bit. All right, there we go. Control 0. All right, whose microphone's open? All right, there we go. So before, after. All right, see that shoulder? It just looks a little bit more natural. Okay, so it's these little tweaks that you never think of doing that can really change the appearance. Okay. All right. Any questions on anything we covered? All right. Anybody interested in removing the lanyard, the black lanyard around her neck? Yes, no, maybe?
What can it do? I mean, one side is a little bit too dark. Or do you remove it or do you lighten it up?
So
The lanyard. I'm sorry.
yeah,
Yes. Now
that
I,
lanyard. All
yeah,
right.
sure.
Now we've come this far.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we're going to create a new blank layer, okay? And the nice thing is we now have the remove tool, okay? That does a fairly decent job, okay? But there's a couple issues with it, all right? One is the issue with matching the DPI. All right, I think we have. It used to be. What was it? 1920 by no. It used to be like a little over 1,000 pixels square. Now it's up to 2,000 pixels square. All right. Anything about above that, it would get kind of stretched. But we got it to the point where it's working fairly well. All right, so I'm just going to take the tool and I'm just going to loosely work around that upper part of the lanyard, all right? And as long as you make a loop and complete the loop, it will auto fill in the section in there. And then, of course, it's got to go up to the cloud. And whoa, that's not what we wanted. It took it and it created a single lanyard and split it in two. Hey, it did a great job, but that's not what we want. Okay, so obviously the remove tool's not working. That's one of the side effects of artificial intelligence. All right, so what can we do? Well, let's try the spot healing. All right, and for that, we just have to kind of paint over what it is we're trying to remove. All right, let's give that. Ooh, and no, that definitely does not do a very good job. All right. Okay, and actually we need that on its separate layer. Okay, so what can we do? Well, we can try the old-fashioned way using a clone stamp and see if we can kind of like use the clone stamp to kind of build. All right, but this is going to take a lot of work and you have to have a very creative eye in order to do this kind of work. All right, you can see it's really making it into mush. All right, so that might not be the best solution. Okay. We can try, yeah, object selection. Yeah, that doesn't work either. Okay. The best tool is usually the remove tool. All right. So we tried doing it in parts. Let's see if maybe if we do the entire thing rather than taking it into two parts, let's see if it removes it that way. And bam. And bam. Come on, bam. There we go. Oh, there we go. Did a fairly decent job this time around. Okay. That's, like I said, that's one of the problems with the AI tool. It can be hit and miss. All right. And we do have a little bit of cleanup to do. All right. Because if we look here, we have this, it put a seam there, you know. So we can just go over that, select that, and let it do its magic, and voila. Okay. Now we zoom in a little bit. Yeah, we can see a little bit. Well, any of that we can just kind of use our regular spot healing tool and clean that up, and it does a fairly decent job. All right, same thing, kind of like a little bit of the edges here. You can see a little bit of the edge. Just clean it up. Okay. All right, and then we have this part of the lanyard here. All right, we can go ahead and use our remove tool. And once again, all right, and when you do, you want to go a little bit outside. You want to select a little bit of the area outside of what it is you're trying to remove. All right. Oh, there we go. Did a really, 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 really good job on that one. Okay. All right. And voila, before and after, and nobody is the wiser. Okay. All right. We have a little bit of a stray here. We can just use our regular spot healing brush there and just get rid of that. And then also, if we go to the top, we can take these stray hairs that are all up here, and we can remove some of these. If you like. All right. You have to be careful because sometimes you'll get a little bit of a softening around where you're removing. So be aware of that. Okay. All right. That looks pretty darn good. There, if we wanted to really nitpick, we can get rid of these. All right. And that's pretty much it for our retouch. Oh no, let's do one more thing. All right. We're going to get rid of the wrinkles under her eyes. Okay. All right. So this layer, we're utilizing this layer here as our kind of like spot removal or, remove. Okay. Now, in essence, what we're looking to do here is, we don't necessarily want to remove the wrinkles. All right. We don't want to make her not look like who she is. All right. What we want to do is make her look the best that she can be of who she is. All right. So what I like to do is we're not removing them, but we are going to tone them down. Okay. Now, the philosophy behind this is when you are in front of a person and you're talking with them directly, all right, oftentimes we make that eye contact, but we're not really studying everything about the person. It's not like we're analyzing their wrinkles and their flaws and what their glasses and their clothing, seeing if their clothing has little spots. Unless something is like really blatantly out there, we tend to ignore the little stuff. All right. However, when we photograph something, we are now taking that, what is normally moving live action in front of us, and we're freezing it. And now, because the interaction isn't a live interaction, a photograph gives us the permission to really look at a person. And at that point, we can really look at and spot the flaws, all right, which we normally wouldn't do. So in order to mimic what we normally wouldn't do in a live situation, we minimize a lot of those flaws in order to replicate what we would normally do in a live situation, right? So we're not going to remove them. We are going to minimize them, all right? but we are going to use the same tools. All right. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to go ahead and rename this wrinkles for lack of a better term. And we can use the spot healing. I tend to find that works okay because it doesn't need to be perfect. All right. And all we're going to do is we're just going to paint on all these wrinkles and we're going to make them disappear. Okay. And you're probably saying, but you just said we're not gonna be getting rid of them. All right. There is a method to the madness. Okay. But the first thing we got to do is we do need to identify them all. All right. And make them go away. All right. And I'm going to switch over to the stamp clone, select here, and then just clean that up a little bit. There we go. Okay. Now, all right, there's before and after. Okay, looks terrible. What we're going to do is we're going to take the opacity slider and we are going to bring it down until we just get a little bit of the wrinkles back in. Let me zoom out. Okay, you can see they're there. All right, but they're not in your face there. Okay, before, after, before, after. Okay, just like that. Any questions? That was fairly easy, right? Okay, we can even do the same thing down on her neck if we want it to be really nice to our clients. Oh, let's bring the opacity back up. There we go. Okay, and then opacity, about 45 looks good. Okay, bring that out. Before, after, before, after. And if I wanted to, you know, we can fix this area a little bit more and minimize it. Depends on, you know, if you feel that it's a little bit too distracting or if the client asks you to. Okay. All right. Any questions? Fairly simple.
Yeah,
Right.
like when you did that in that particular thing,
Yep.
when you lower the opacity, that does it for the whole square, the whole thing. You're working the eyebrow underneath the chin and
Yep.
underneath the eye. That does both. If you
Yeah,
want to do them separate,
anything,
you'd have to get another one.
anything on that layer,
That layer, the whole layer.
the whole layer.
That's good.
All
So
right.
if you want just one
So
of the different amount underneath the chin, you'd have to put another layer.
exactly,
Okay.
you got it. So if you know, if you want a little bit more hidden under the chin, absolutely, you know, put on a separate layer, and just don't make it as transparent. You know, so opacity is about 45 here, maybe 60. You know, but this is one of those cases where salt and pepper to taste. Okay. All right. And then once we got that, control save, and we can close this out. Save that. And when we go back to Lightroom, we're going to see that now we have a second file, image file, and this one is called TIFF. Okay. This is our Photoshop file. Okay. All right, guys, that's pretty much it for this one. Of course, if we wanted to, we can, spend more time doing all kinds of stuff, but that's pretty much it.
Great, thanks, Doc.
All right. Any last minute questions?
Thank you.
Comments, concerns? That's it. All right. Okay. So I've been playing around with a couple ideas. So the next session, maybe we'll play around with some creative still life stuff, something simple that you can do with materials you have at home, and a very simple light setup and some Photoshop skills. Okay. I won't tell you what it is. I'll definitely surprise you guys. Okay.
Cool.
Okay. Thank you.
Alan Kay, we will miss you, but you got to go play with the band.
I'll be thinking of you
All
guys.
right. All right, guys.
Take care.
If there are no questions, that's it for tonight. We will see you in February. Stay safe in the meantime. Weather's pretty nasty out there. So if you got to drive, watch out for that black ice. Okay.
Yeah. Open up the doors under the sink so you don't freeze the pipes.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Oh, yes.
That's it.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, guys. Stay safe.
Have a good one.
Ciao.
Bye.
Thank you for watching Learning Photography with Duck. Brought to you in association with Milford Photo, your local full-service camera store. Located in downtown Milford, Connecticut, Milford Photo offers you a personalized shopping experience. From the latest camera gear to printing and framing services. And, of course, educational workshops to teach you the finer aspects of photography. Don't forget to tell them Duck sent you.